Hi, everybody. This is Joanna Palladino. I'm the Director of the Contracts Unit here at the Department of Labor. And Joe McNerney wanted me just to give you a brief update really quickly. He did let me know that he did send out an email letting you all know that this week's Zoom will resume next week, and that this webinar today on the Grants Gateway Grantee Advance and Claim Submission Training would take the place of your weekly Zoom. I just also wanted to highly encourage you to make sure that you are responsive to your contract managers who are in development of your contracts right now. And whatever you could do to respond to any questions that they may have would be wonderful, so that we can make sure that we can move your contracts forward and get those executed as soon as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor back over to Jeff, and he's going to go over how to request an advance if you would like to request an advance, and also how you can submit your claims moving forward to be able to receive reimbursement for the costs that you are incurring for this amazing, amazing program. So thank you so much. Jeff?
Okay, thank you, Joanna. So yes, my name is Jeff Fila, and I do a lot of the training for Grants Gateway. And I'm going to go through a PowerPoint quickly. It's only 5 or 6 slides, just to give you some kind of overview of what you're going to be doing, some of the things you should be aware of. And then I'll actually log into our test system, and I'll act as a grantee, as you would, go in and enter and file for a claim or file for an advance. So let's go through these slides here first. So I want to talk about preparation for a few minutes here. And first thing is, you really should be aware of and be familiar with the requirements of your program and of your contract. So there's certain things that I'm going to mention here that may not apply to you. Specifically, one thing would be the advances. So we'll talk about advances, but it's not for everybody. It's only for not-for-profit organizations. So you should know what your program manager or contract manager expects from you in your claim submissions. Sounds like you're having weekly meetings about these programs, and you will have, if you haven't already, you will receive documents from your program manager or your contract manager explaining what you need to do. It's a good idea to have your documents ready prior to logging into the Grants Gateway. Just be prepared. If it was me, I would have a separate folder on my computer specifically for this particular claim I'm working on. You'll see I did that in this test that I'm about to do. So just have your documents ready, just so you don't have to be hunting around for them while you're actually in the system. Be aware of what categories your claims will fall under. You'll see once we get into the claim process that the system allows you to claim in different categories, but if there's no money allowed for you in a category, for instance, in a contractual category or travel category, you wouldn't be able to claim under that. So again, this is really knowing the details of your contract. If you have multiple items to claim, know how much your claim should add up to. This is just a little self-check so that once you submit your claim, and let's say it's 5 items and each one is $5,000, your claim should add up to $15,000. And if it doesn't, you know that you've done your math wrong or you forgot to add something. So be aware ahead of time, again, what you're about to submit, how much it should all add up to. And importantly, and I'll get a little more into this in a few minutes, ensure that you have the right role to submit your claim. This is the #1 problem we get at our help desk when people are asking questions through email or calling us. They try to put in a claim and they can't do it. It's not showing them the right options. It doesn't allow them to submit it. Well, the reason for that is because most of the time it's because they're in the wrong role. So it's important that you have the right role. And if you're a delegated administrator for your organization, you can set that up for yourself. And if you're not, you have to talk to that person at your organization to have them set you up. So I'll mention a few other things about that as we go through here. Other preparation information, let's get into knowing the details of your contract. So I mentioned, is there an advance allowed? So you'll know just by looking at your contract, there's section 3B of the state terms and conditions in your contract. That'll tell you information about advances. Also, specifically in your contract, section 1A of attachment D, that's a part of your contract that you can look at in the PDF, that will tell you your specific advance details. And this next bullet here, we've mentioned advances are only allowed for nonprofit organizations. So if you're a for-profit organization, you won't be able to claim for an advance. You also should know how often claims are allowed or required. And again, that's in your contract. It's in section 1B of attachment D of your contract. That talks about the specific claim requirements when they're due. And forgive me, I didn't look at these, so I don't remember if they're monthly or quarterly. There may be additional payment provisions detailed in Section 3 of Attachment D. I don't know that there are here, but this is just a generic thing to say. Again, really just reaffirming, you should just be familiar with your contract, and Attachment D is where you learn about the payment and claiming process. And another thing which is not applicable here, but are there match requirements? So that's another part of the system if there's a match requirement. And you'll see that as I go through, but they'll be grayed out. So also part of preparation is the program expectations. Know what your contract manager expects from you in your claim submissions. So what specific documents do they expect? Is there a specific format? Is there other information about it that they expect you to submit? Each agency and program may have different requirements for claim submission. So the reason I mention this is you may have contracts with other state agencies or other programs, and they may do it slightly different. So just because you know how to do it with another agency, realize it might be slightly different with these specific contracts for DOL. Some programs may want multiple items scanned together. Some may want separate attachments. Again, that's just going on with the information from your program manager. Make sure that you know how they want you to provide these documents. Same thing with this next bullet point. Some may have specific overview sheets or specific formats they require you to use. Again, you'll get that information if you haven't already from your contract manager. And then ensure that you have the invoice and proof of payment and that those items line up with your contract requirements. So you need to have the proof of the things that you're claiming for. Again, part of what you'll get in the communication with your contract manager, but it's important to make sure that we have the right information in the claim. There's some questions that have been asked that I will get to, so just sit tight on those. So this is the specific supporting documentation for the Excluded Worker Program contracts. And if you have other contracts with DOL or other agencies, obviously things are going to be slightly different. So advances require a CPA statement, a coverage bond, and the board of directors statement. So again, these are documents that the contract manager will request from you. And then when you're doing claims, so there's two different types of things we're going to do. One is an advance, one is a claim. And the claim, you will have attendance sheets, you will have incentive payments, you'll have backup documentation, and you'll have monthly reports. So these are all things that when I talked about before, what should you be prepared with or what documents should you have prepared? This is that list. These are the things that you should have available. More information about having your documents ready. We need everything as a PDF, so you can't submit an Excel sheet or a Word doc where those documents may be natively Excel or Word. You do have to save them or convert them to a PDF. You have to make sure that the PDFs are not password protected. Our system would not be able to read them if that was the case and wouldn't be able to package them in the claim submission. They must be readable. That is, if it's a scan of a printout that was already poor quality, we want to make sure that the contract manager or whoever's reviewing your claims can actually read it. So, oops, I have a typo there. SANs are allowed. No, scans are allowed, but native PDF documents are preferred. So please make sure that you do have PDFs. It's much better if it's saved electronically as a PDF rather than scanned from a scanner. But if you have to do it, you have to do it, and we understand. Please follow your program or contract manager's guidance for how to prepare these documents. And the supporting documents, we do have a labeling format that we'd like you to adhere to. It just makes it easier for our reviewers to know what they're looking at. So, and I have a typo here, I'm sorry. This says attend sheets, it should be attendance sheets. So you see what we're doing is Voucher 1 and then the name of the document. Voucher 1, incentive payments. Voucher 1, backup documentation. Voucher 1, monthly reports. So we want to make sure that you label them just so it's easier for our reviewers to read. So the next thing is talking about logging in with the correct role. So log in with the right role. The Grants Gateway is a role-based system, and every account has only one role that they're allowed to do. So there's some overlap of certain roles, but when we talk about claims and payments, there's really only one role that you have to have, and that's the grantee payment signatory account. That role allows you to do everything in a claim, whereas these other roles, you can see in this next bullet, other roles can start a claim, but they can't submit it. So the grantee system administrator, grantee contract signatory, or grantee can start the claim, but can't actually submit it. So regardless, you need to have somebody in that role of grantee payment signatory because someone eventually is going to have to submit it, sign off on it, and submit it. So when you created your application, when you set up your organization for the document vault, there were other roles that were used. Perhaps when you did your application, it was the contract signatory or the system administrator. Again, those people could start a claim, but you still need somebody else in the role of grantee payment signatory. Now, when I say somebody else, it doesn't have to be a different person from you. You certainly can do it, but you would have to have multiple accounts, multiple roles and multiple accounts. So it's certainly acceptable and happens often that if you're a smaller organization, you might have 3 roles. You might be the grantee delegated administrator. That's the person that manages all the accounts in your system, also manages the document vault if you're a not-for-profit. You might also be the grantee contract signatory because you submitted and saved the contract or the application. And then you may also be the grantee payment signatory. So that's 3 accounts for one person to do 3 different things or several different things in our system. So if you don't have the appropriate role, a user in the role of grantee delegated administrator can add the account. Notice that person cannot do anything related to a claim, and that's another question we get a lot. Somebody will send a question to our email, to our help desk saying, you know, I can't do a claim, why is it letting me? And we see that all they have is the grantee delegated administrator account. So again, the roles are a little tricky, but you know, your delegated admin should be able to manage it and should be able to add a new account for you or whoever is doing this. And a special note here at the bottom, account roles can't be changed. So that's another thing that people run into. Their delegated admin looks at their account and they say, oh, you're a contract signatory. Let me just change you to a payment signatory. Well, our system kind of allows that, but it doesn't work. It ends up making both of those roles useless, and then you have to contact our help desk. So don't have them change your account, change your role. Have them create a new account, an additional account for you or whoever is going to be this payment signatory. So once you go through the process that you'll see me do, your claim will be submitted. Well, how will you know that it's been submitted? There's a couple things that the system will let you know. One is the status will change, and that'll be obvious. You will have submitted it. It'll then be in the status of payment in review. And you may not know how long that takes, but I'll show you in a minute what you can look at. But you'll no longer have a task for that payment or be able to edit it. Once you've sent it off and you've submitted it, it's now locked from your editing and is only allowed for the person at DOL to work on it. So you can follow that process. You can search for your claim or search for your payment and note the current payment status. And there's also a report, a little PDF that will pop up for you called the payment schedule report, and that'll let you see the setup schedule for your claim, where it is in the process, how many days it's been, and so on. So I'm going to answer a couple questions. I see one that was a good question here. Is there a max number of people or accounts that can hold certain roles? No, there is not. You can have as many people as you want in those roles. So if you have a lot of claims, or if you have, you know, one person is going to do half and the other person is going to do half or whatever, that's fine. It's completely up to you how many people you have in what roles and what roles the people have. So we leave that up to you. The only thing we set up is the first 1 or usually 2 delegated administrators, and we leave the rest up to your delegated administrators to manage for your organization.
So in order to receive an advance payment, there are a number of things that nonprofits need to be able to provide. And one is, when we say a coverage bond, we mean a copy of a fidelity bond covering all persons who will handle funds granted by the state. And this bond has to be at least equal to or greater than the maximum amount of any advance, and should include the state as co-insured. This document is required for the contract, and a copy of the paid invoice is required for the renewal contract, and should also be including coverage dates applicable to the expenses. So you're going to want the coverage dates to match your contract time or your contract term if possible, and you can get that fidelity bond from your insurance company as well. You also should have program responsibility and tax certification. So prior to any payments being made, a statement must be submitted and signed by the chairman of the board of directors, your chief operating officer, or other appropriate chief elected official, chief executive official, accepting responsibility for operation of the program and certifying that all federal, state, including unemployment insurance taxes, local taxes, and fringe benefit payments resulting from operation of this program will be paid and that no past taxes are due and owing. So this statement is required, for the contract. And also a statement from a certified public accountant certifying that the contractor's bookkeeping practices have been reviewed within the past 12 months and meet generally accepted accounting principles. You don't have to remember all of the things I just said. Your contract manager will send you this information about what is required when you email them saying, you know what, we would like in advance. And then what they'll do is they'll submit this information to you in an email letting you know what would be covered and what we need in order to be able to proceed with your advance.
And then while we're here, someone just asked, can we talk about that arrow, but the incentive payments there, what does that entail?
That's only if that's in your budget. So if you don't have a budget line for an incentive, then you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
And again, the details of these, this really isn't the webinar for that, but your contract manager will have that information.
Absolutely, and any costs that you have in your approved budget, in your executed contract, your contract manager will work with you as to what backup documentation would be required based on the cost in your particular budget. The program is allowed for some flexibility based on the needs of your community and based on your outreach model. And so each of you is a little bit different. And because of that, your contract manager is always your best bet when it comes to seeking reimbursement and financial reimbursement. When it comes to program questions, of course, Joe McNerney is your contact for that. So if it's about application for the actual fund, anything that's fund related, you would direct to Joe, and anything that's related to your particular organization receiving reimbursement for the work that you're doing for your outreach efforts, that is always directed to your contract manager.
So I want to talk about a few things about logging in before we actually get into it. I'm looking at our test system right now. I want to go to our production system just so you're familiar with it. Again, it's grantsgateway.ny.gov. We do have another website called the Grants Management website. So it's grantsmanagement.ny.gov. And this is our site for documentation, support, help. There's some information here about payments as well. So just FYI, you probably want to go to this video for your details of the payment, but there is a apply and manage here, request payment. There's the basic instructions there for how to do that. And we do have, if we go to request payment, I believe from this page, there should be a link directly to the manual, and that's right down here. So the vendor manual, if you were to go into the manual, there's a section, you can easily find that in the table of contents. There's a section for how to submit claims and advances. So we do have support and information on that on our website, the grantsmanagement.ny.gov website. We do have a link to our help desk. You can see Get Help right here. I should have included that in the PowerPoint. If we do send that out to everybody, I will add this in the PowerPoint. But we do have a email address and phone number that you can contact us. Again, this is only for questions related to technical aspects of the gateway. We can't answer the question such as, is this cost allowed, or is this, part of my contract? That has to go to Joe or to, your program or contract manager. I will say it's a lot easier to contact us through email. It's a lot easier for us because we are still, for the most part, working remotely. There's only coverage a couple days a week, so on the phone. So we certainly check our voicemails, but it's a lot quicker and really easier. We find most questions are a lot easier to answer through email. So you can see that grantsgateway@its.ny.gov. All right, so I'm going to go back to the Grants Gateway, and I want to point one quick thing out about this. that I always do because some people still run into it. A lot of people do have the habit of typing in www before they go to a website. And if you were to do that with the Grants Gateway, you will be presented with this error. Your connection isn't private. You can still kind of force it and go through to it, but you'll always have this not secure error here. That's just because the way the state has set up a lot of these secure websites is it doesn't include www in the address. It's just the address. So just go to grantsgateway.ny.gov and that'll get you where you need to be. Please don't use www. And then for you, you would log in here. You click on Grants Gateway Login and you type in your user ID and password. Now, that's not going to work here because I'm going to be in our testing site. So let's move over to the testing site and we'll take care of it. We'll log in here. So I'm going to log in and the system remembers my user ID and my password. Although I guess I had my browser do that. So you may have to type in your username and password, but I'm going to do that and log in. And it tells me what role I've logged in as. So there we go, grantee payment signatory. So that's affirmation that I am in the right role and I'll be able to work on the contract. Again, if you're in a grantee contract signatory role, you can start a claim, but you can't actually submit it. So this overview page, if you were the one that submitted your application before, if you were the one that works in your contract, it's probably familiar to you. You may have had tasks before. That would be down here where I'm moving my mouse, if you can see that, called My Tasks. But that's not something you will have now when you have an executed contract and you need to work on a claim. So how do you find your contract and how do you start the claim? So you have to go here to Contracts and you can search for it. So the first thing you're going to do is log in, click on Contracts. Now, it remembers the search, and I did one for my specific contract number here, 21415. So I click on Search, and you can see I found the contract 21415, and I can click on it right here, which is actually the application number, and I can get into my contract. Other ways of doing it is if you don't have many contracts in the system at all, you can just hit clear here and hit search. You don't have to have search criteria, but realize if you have a lot of contracts, you may be presented with a big long list of results. So if you're new to the system or you only have 1 or 2 contracts, the easiest way might just be to go to Contracts, clear, and then search. Now I don't have to type in this whole number. If I remember my contract number, if I only remember the numbers, 21415, that's fine, that'll work. And it finds it, I can click on it. Or you could probably just type in the word worker because it's excluded, or you can type in the word excluded. And I'm looking for all contracts in a grant opportunity that has the word worker in it. And there it is, right? Same one because it's the EWP contract. So several ways of finding it, but you have to go into contracts. You don't go into payments, we'll look at that later. You have to go into contracts and search for it and then click on it. So I'm clicking on my application number. That's going to bring me into the contract itself. And this is the contract main page. Now, what we're going to do is go here to progress reports and related documents, and we're going to initiate a payment. But I just wanted to mention, in that PowerPoint, when I said you should be familiar with your contract, here's how to be familiar with your contract. Go to the Forms menu, and then go down. I clicked on the word Forms menu, by the way, and then go down to the Contract Versions section here, right near the bottom. Click on Contract Versions. And I'm not going to do this, but right here, this is your contract. That's the signed contract. And I could click on it, and that's the entire PDF. You can save it if you want. It's always going to be here in the gateway. But this is the signed contract that you'd be able to work on. Not work on, but you'd be able to read and look at those sections that we mentioned in the PowerPoint and see the details of your contract. But what I'm going to do is actually start the claim or start an advance. And you don't have to go back to the Forms menu. You can just hover here. But regardless, wherever you are in the system, you're going to go here in the contract. You're going to go here to Progress Reports and Related Documents and click on Initiate a Payment. So just a reminder, if I look at details here, the little drop down, I'm in the role of grantee payment signatory, and it's in the status of contract executed. You could not start a claim for a contract that hasn't yet been executed. All right, so progress reports and related documents, and then I'll initiate a claim for payment. And I actually clicked it, so I'm going to click it here. Initiate a payment. So sometimes this takes a while for it to work. I don't know exactly why, certain browsers or whatever, but we'll see what happens in this spinning here. If it spins too long, you can get out of it and come back in, and your claim will have been started. So while we're waiting, Joanna, there's something you wanted me to mention, and I forgot to put it in the PowerPoint, and it was something to do with the advance and 10%. And I think the recouping is only recouping 10% of the advance, not of the whole claim. Is that correct? Is that the right way of saying that?
Right. So if you're recouping the advance, the system will recoup at 10%, but it's not 10% of your voucher for that month. It's 10% of the total of the advance. So for instance, let's say your advance, 10% of your advance would be, $2,000 each month potentially, and you voucher for $2,100, the system will recoup $2,000 of that $2,100 monthly advance. So I just wanted you to realize that the system will automatically start to recoup at 10% of the advanced amount for each voucher submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, and that was the perfect time because you can see my my payment has now finally created. So that was a long time. Hopefully that's only because I'm in the test system, but notice we did just give it, a couple minutes and it did process. If that didn't work, if I logged out and I logged back in and I hovered over progress reports and related documents, I bet I would have seen that even though the page didn't refresh for me. So it's a good thing to note. Just be aware that, with the spinning icon, if you noticed up here in the top left in my tab, it eventually woke itself up and now we're in the claim. Now, how do I know I'm in this claim? Well, I'm in a document called this. Let's see if I can highlight it. INV DOL, and then the contract number -001, right? So this should look familiar to you. Contract C21415GG, that's this contract that I looked at. So the invoice is it has this prefix INV, and then the suffix is the invoice number for that contract. And of course, this is the first one we did, so it's 001. Okay, so that was here under document information. You can see the details. I'm now in a claim, and it's in, again, that role, grantee payment signatory, and I'm in the status of payment in process. So we'll take note of that status once we submit it later. This main page just has kind of general information. There's that contract number again, and we're going to go in and start a claim here. So notice my term is from 6/25/2021 to 6/24/2022. I'm going to go in here to Forms menu. So I've started a claim, but I haven't told the system what I want to do yet. So that's all under this Forms menu. Just like your contract had a Forms menu and your application had a Forms menu, your claim does as well. So I'm going to click on the word Forms to bring me into the Forms menu, and there's these two documents, Payment Properties and Notes. So Payment Properties is where you want to start. We'll click on that, and we're going to tell the system that we want an advance. No, it's not the final payment. And it's for the period of 6/24/2021 to, I think it was 6/25, whatever, I'll do 6/23/2022. Now this payment IRS code, you can see there's no red asterisk next to it, so it's not a required field. You can leave that blank, and then we'll hit save. So all this is doing is telling the system, do I want to claim or an advance? And depending on which one you pick, it will give you other options. So I hit save up in the blue bar here, and you can see it's processing. And in a couple seconds, it should come back and wake up here. It does seem like our test system is a bit slow today. I'm going to go back and look at my contract just to remind myself, something you may need to do. So yeah, it was 6/25 to 6/24. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my claim 001. And notice what I did. I clicked, let me show you what I did here. I clicked on the parent information. That brought me back to the contract. I'm now on the contract main page, and I verified, oh yeah, here's the dates, 6/25/2021 to 6/24. And then I can go now hover over progress reports and related documents, and instead of initiating one, I can see, oh, there's 001 that I just started. I can click on it and get back into it. So now let's go and fix the dates. and that should be 625, because I can't start it a day before to 624. Now it should be happy. So that is an important thing to realize. When you have an error, read the error, and it should explain to you what the problem is. A lot of times we get emails from the help desk to the help desk that says, hey, I'm trying to do this claim and it's giving me an error. Well, what is the error? We need to know what the error is so that we can help you. So if you do have questions, more is better. Tell us the contract number, maybe even the claim number, what role are you using, and of course, what is the specific error that you're getting. So we're letting it refresh. Again, it's a little slow here today. So no error, that's good. Green light means you save the page fully and completely there. Okay, so what I did by saying I want an advance, now when we go to Forms menu, we have to click on the word Forms. The system has given me a couple other options. Now we've got Advance Request, Payment Voucher Preview, Uploads, and then Notes. So we're going to go in order here. We're going to go to Advance Request. And it gives me an error just because I haven't done anything yet. So I need the advance amount requested. So notice this is a $225,000 contract. I'm allowed a 25% advance, and that adds up to $56,250. So if I went in and tried to request $57,000, and then type in the justification. I mean, the justification is that as a nonprofit, it's written in your contract that you're allowed it. Now, there's an accept button here. I'm not going to click that, but I just want to point out that you're going to have to do that at some point. But I'm going to show you, we should get an error here because I typed in 57,000, even though it should be 56,250. And it does, in fact, give me that error. In fact, it gives me two errors because I didn't check the checkbox here as well. So I'm going to fix this. I'll go to 56,250. And I'm going to check this box. And what this is saying is I, as the payment signatory, certify that this is just, true, and correct. And what I'm about to do is what I'm allowed to do, obviously. So I'm going to hit accept and hit save. Now you could do that later, clicking that accept button, but the system will never let you submit your claim until you click that button. Now that worked, right? Because now it did allow my 56,250. All right, so now I'm going to go back into the Forms menu. I've satisfied that requirement, but I need to now add those uploads. So I'm going to go to Payment Uploads, and I'm going to pick supporting documentation to provide with my advance. So you can see the category, there's Advanced Justification or Miscellaneous. I'm going to pick Miscellaneous here. And I have a couple documents. Remember we talked about the CPA statement. Right, so I click on that, and then I click Choose File to find the document. Now, I'm in Edge, Microsoft Edge. Other browsers have different words for this button. Some of them are Browse, some of them are Select, some of them are Choose File. So it does the same thing, just realize if you were looking at this or looking at screenshots, it might be slightly different than your browser. So I'll click Choose File, and I'll go here to my, where is it? This happens to be in my OneDrive. I'll go to the DOL claimant, and I'll go to, what was I doing? CPA statement. So I'm going to upload the CPA statement. Now, it's not uploaded yet. I have to hit save. So I hit the save button. Wait a couple seconds, hopefully only a couple seconds, and it did. And it's now saved it. So there's the CPA statement. And if I wanted to double check if I uploaded the right document, I could click here on View File. So I'm going to do that. I'll click View File. It's going to open it up for me. And you can see mine is just a sample document. Yours would obviously be the real thing, but you would look at it and say, yep, that's what I intended to upload. All right, so there's a couple other things I can do. Or I should do. So the other thing is the coverage bond, right? And I'll go find it. There it is, hit save. That's been saved. And then finally, there was the Board of Directors statement. And we'll hit save. So remember I talked about the labeling and voucher one? Well, this isn't a voucher, so we didn't type that in here. There's only going to be one advance that you're requesting. Okay, so I've provided those 3 documents. Again, if you had other documents, you could just keep going and keep hitting save. But I'm going to go back to the forms menu. And we've done the payment properties, we've done advanced requests, we've done payment uploads. I'll mention notes. It's not really something you probably will use or should not use, really. It's a way in our system to record notes to and from you in the program. But if you didn't let them know you did it, they're not going to just actively go and look at it. So the best way of dealing with it is just sending emails. But if you wanted something, saved forever in this claim, this is where it would happen. Unless DOL instructs you to do it, I wouldn't do it though. But you can see I just put in gibberish here, and it gave it a time and date stamp and who did it and at what status. So that's what notes are about. I'm going to go back to Forms menu. And the last thing I want to do before I submit it, you don't have to do this, but you can go to the Payment Voucher Preview, and it'll actually create a PDF of all the things we just did. And this is just kind of one last check for you to verify, yes, you did the right things, you uploaded the right documents, it's all there. This is the thing that my reviewer will be looking at. So when I clicked on that button, just to remind you, I clicked on Payment Voucher Preview. It's now in another tab here, processing that PDF. It just did. It allows me to download it. I'm just going to open it. And here it is. It's a 6-page document, which includes the cover sheet. I'm requesting 56250. This is the document that the request form that I filled out. This is me where I certified it. That's that electronic signature we were talking about. And then this is kind of a table of contents on page 3. What are the attachments that I provided? And then here are those actual attachments. Now, of course, this is just junk. Yours would be the real documents, but this should show in the order that you uploaded them. And you can see there's 3 documents and 3 pages that I uploaded. So as far as I'm concerned, this is done and I'm ready to submit it. And I can do that by doing a status change. Before I do, I'm just going to get out of it just to show you. If I go back to my home page, I'm no longer in that claim. I'm no longer in that contract. I don't have a task here. If you worked on applications or contracts before, you might be familiar with tasks. Tasks don't happen with claims. So to get to that claim, again, I would have to go to contracts and search for it. However, now that I've started a payment, I could go to payments and search for it that way, right? So I could search for that contract number again, which I forget, but I could also search for the word worker and find it that way. Or if this is your first claim ever, just hit clear and hit search. So I'm asking the system, show me all payments that I've started for an opportunity that has the word worker in it. And I hit search, and it's still searching. You can see up here in the top. And it found it. I want to address one question that was just asked. Someone asked, would a audit report from last fiscal year be sufficient, or does it have to be a separate CPA statement? I'm going to let Joanna or DOL answer that specifically, but I do want to say audits, if you receive an audit from an actual CPA, they are often, like 99% of the ones I've seen, protected files. And that's the kind of file that our system will reject, won't be able to read, and will cause problems and confusion with your claim submission. So I don't think I have an example of one, but it says the word secured up in the top, and we do have ways of resaving it. Basically, you just print the document in a browser like Chrome, and it removes that security. It doesn't sound very secure if that's all you need to do. But again, just to tell you, an audit that you receive from an auditor will probably be secured and will fail to be properly included in our system. All right, back to what I was doing. I want to get back into that claim so I can submit it. So I'll go here. I said claim, it's in advance. I clicked on it. Forms menu, we did everything there. Now we're going to submit it. So we go to status changes. You can either click it or hover over it, and you can go to, you can see obviously payment canceled, but in this case, I'm going to send it to payment submitted. It's processing. It has this agreement that what you're doing, what you've submitted is just true and correct. I do agree. And again, only the payment signatory can do this. And I've now submitted it and electronically signed it. So how do I know that? Well, obviously no errors occurred, but also the details here we can see it's in review. It's in payment in review, FM. That's the PM, that's the program manager can look at it. And one last thing I mentioned in that PowerPoint that I'll say, there's this report here. So on the menu page of your claim, on the main page of the payment, there's this link here, Payment Schedule Report. I can click on it. It's a PDF that gets generated on the fly here. A couple seconds, it'll allow me to download it. And I can click on it. And this is a report that just shows what is the scheduled number of days, how long does it take, and where are we right now? So we've scheduled 15 days for the program manager to review it. We may send it back to you, the grantee, and if that's the case, we've scheduled 5 days. And you can see these other days in the schedule. That doesn't mean that it's definitely going to take 15 days. And it also doesn't mean that it could take longer and it could take much shorter. So it's just what we build into the schedule. If we want things to kind of go on time, this is an adequate schedule for an advance. We can also see the status and where it is right now. So it's still in payment in review. Obviously, I just did it a few seconds ago, and we can see when, the day and time that was last in that status. So that was the payment schedule report. You don't have to go there, but if people are wondering, well, how do I know what the status of my claim is, you can look at that. Okay, so done with the advance, let's do an actual claim. I'm going to go back to the contract. And remember, I would find it by going up here to contracts and searching for it. And I'm going to go to progress reports and related documents and initiate another payment. So there's 001, which was the advance. And if I initiate another one, this is what I was expecting before. It should show processing, please wait. And then it takes a couple seconds and creates another one. While we're waiting, someone asked, is there a deadline for requesting an advance? I'll let DOL jump in if they want to on that one.
You're going to want to request the advance before you actually want to submit your first voucher. So as soon as your contract is executed, you should request that advance. Or what you can do is also let your contract manager know right now that you will be requesting an advance and start the process to gather the documents so that that advance can be processed, immediately, as soon as that contract is executed.
And Joanna, I didn't know the answer to this. I didn't look at the contracts. Were they monthly claims or quarterly claims?
We're preferring monthly claims because the intent is the fact that you are going to be up and running and quickly delivering services. And also because we want to be able to keep track of payments and vouchering so that we can move toward adding the additional 25% to these contracts should you expend the 75% of the award amount that you got. So we prefer monthly claims and monthly reporting.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
So you can see we're still waiting here. We're going to give it another, oh, there it goes, on cue. Okay, so it started a new claim. You can see now it's 002. We're now in a brand new claim form, the payment main page. So just like before, when we did in advance, we're going to go to Forms menu. And I'm clicking on the word Forms. And I'm going to Payment Properties and tell the system what I'm doing. So I'm not doing an advance. I'm doing a claim. No, it's not the last, it's not the final payment. And even if you did select final payment, it still allows you to do more. And then I'm going to put in the date, which is 6/24, nope, 25, 2021 to 7/24/2021. This is 1 month. Again, ignore that payment IRS code and hit save. So again, this is you telling the system, what am I doing, a claim or an advance? So I hit save. Notice the spinning up here in the top. All right, so it's saved. Information has been saved, no errors. If we go to the Forms menu now, you have to click on it. Now we have different options, different than what we saw in the advance. The main thing here is this unitemized expenditure claim detail form. So we click on that. And this is where we're going to tell the system what we're doing, what we're claiming for. So in this budget, I had $94,611.66 of salary. I had fringe, I had travel, no equipment. So if I tried to put in dollars for equipment, I'm putting in numbers here, or words, or contractual, the system shouldn't let me. You can see 54,000 in space property, 11,000 in operating, and 42 in other. So if this is monthly for a 12-year contract, I'm not putting in this full amount. I didn't do the math to figure out what I'm going to put in. I'm going to just use round numbers. So I'm going to use 10,000 here, and I'm going to put in, let's say, 9,000 here. I know that's high, but, and I'm going to make an error. I'm going to put in 5,000 here. Obviously, you know that shouldn't work because I'm allowed 0. We'll put in, let's say, 1,000 for travel. We'll do 1,000 for that, and let's say 6,000 for this. And I'll hit save. Now it's scrolling to the right because I zoomed in, just for it to be easier to read, but you can see I zoomed out there a little bit, but I'm going to keep zoomed in. Oh, it's processing. You can see the circle. Now, if I scroll down here, there's the match section. I mentioned that in the PowerPoint. You can ignore that. There's no match requirements. There's also a comment section where you can type in comments. Not needed, not necessary. And there's also, you can see the accept button. So I'm going to have to do that at some point. That's me actually signing off on this claim, but I didn't do it yet, and I'll show you what happens as I go through. So we're still letting it save, and it should come back. Yep, it should come up with 2 errors. What it did, one is I forgot to accept, check that checkbox, and the other is that, hey, you got to do you have to do a modification if you want to put in money for contractual, because your original contract doesn't allow contractual. So I'm not going to put in a modification. I'm just going to look at it and say, oh yeah, I shouldn't have put in that 5,000 there. So now if I hit save, I'm still going to get that error because of the checkbox down here, but it's going to get rid of the error related to contractual services. So I'm going to wait and not do that checkbox until the very end. Okay, so I got that error that I expected. I'll ignore that for now. You don't want to ignore it. I'm just doing it to show you what happens when we try to submit it. Okay, so we did the unitemized expenditure claim detail. Let's ignore that red hand. We're not going to do the preview yet, but we do need to do uploads. We'll click on payment uploads. And now this is the proof related to what we just submitted. All right, so we have supporting documentation, and then in what category, right? So it could be miscellaneous, or it could be the specific category. So we had some for salary. And this would be for, am I picking salary for the category, or are we rolling all the backup documentation into one document?
You can roll all of your backup documentation into one document.
Okay, so because I picked salary, that may not be true. If you're rolling it all into one document, you can pick miscellaneous, which that'll cover my salary, my travel, my rent, and so on. Right. Now, when you say, Joanne, you can, do you really want them to? Do they have to?
They don't have to, depending on how much documentation they may have for backup documentation. So for instance, if it's a challenge for you to roll up everything into one PDF for your proof of payment, and it's easier for you and your team to be able to split it out, let's say your salary, then let's say your operating expenses, you can then, upload that in individual categories. Just make sure that you select the category and the description reflect what that is. So we're pretty flexible with you, as long as, number one, your naming system for your file reflects what it is, and two, that you're, pretty consistent with how you're providing that documentation. So if you look at what Jeff is doing, he's saying, okay, so here's my salary, here's my travel, that's fine. But let's say you don't have a lot of costs for whatever reason. Let's say your contract amount is pretty small, and your backup documentation is not hugely expansive, and it's easy for you to roll that up into, let's say, a 3- or 5-page PDF. If that's easier and better for you, that's okay for us as well. Just make sure that you pick the right category, and the description for the file is clear, and your naming of the file is clear.
Thank you. So I did it the 2 ways. The first 2 I did Voucher 1 salary backup, second one Voucher 1 travel backup, and then the third one is just general in the miscellaneous section backup documentation. Now remember, there's other documents.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jeff. I was going to say some of the backup documentation is going to vary from category to category, and you're going to work with your contract manager to determine what backup documentation is needed. But for instance, with salary, you know, we just need to show that there's proof of payment of salaries, you know, proof of payment of, let's say, your rent, if you're charging rent to the grant, proof of payment if you've ordered supplies and paid for supplies. So you just have to remember that this is a reimbursement-based contract. And so in order to reimburse you, we need to see evidence that you paid something. So that's what we're looking for, whether it's, you know, invoices that have been paid and been notified as paid. If you've used, I don't know, credit cards to pay for something, that, you know, copy of the credit card statement, some kind of, you know, evidence of a proof of payment. If something you supply is not enough, your contract manager will let you know. But again, if you have any questions about, you know, what would work for backup documentation or supporting documentation, you can always work with your contract manager for that level of specificity.
Okay, thank you. So you can see I went in here and I put in those 3 backup documentations and then the attendance sheets, incentives payments, and monthly report. Now, there is a delete button here, and that would be only useful now. If you submit this and then the program manager sends it back to you because you were missing some documentation, you can't delete documentation, but you can see this grayed out button here. Your program manager can kind of disallow it and allow you to add something else. But what I wanted to show you is it should allow me to, for instance, delete this attendance sheet. Now, it's kind of weird. You check delete, and then you hit save, which is saying save the fact that I deleted that one item, and it did. Now we don't have the attendance sheets here. So I'll just re-add attendance sheets. And I'll find it, which again in my system is just gibberish documents, but in yours would be obviously the real document. So here's all my supporting documentation. We'll go back to the Forms menu. We'll pretend we don't see that it's not signed yet, and we can do the preview. Kind of afraid to click it because it might take a little while, but let's just see what happens, just because we're in this test system. But as you know, as you should remember from our advance, it's going to be the whole document that DOL will be able to look at. It'll be the cover sheets, the signature page, which of course we didn't sign, and then the supporting documentation. And you can see that was really quick. So here we go. I'll zoom in a bit. Cover page, the details of what we're asking for, 10,000, 9,000, 1,000. The comments, which I didn't put anything in, the certification, which I didn't do, and then the documentation, kind of a table of contents of what I've included. It's nice this way so that your reviewer can see, you know, exactly what they're expecting to see. The first document they see should be the salary backup. The second one they see should be the travel backup. And of course, these are just sample documents, but here they are. So there's all those attachments that I added. So again, you don't have to do that preview. It's nice to do just to make sure that things look as you expect them to. Especially if you're including large documents, make sure they're readable, make sure that the system isn't rejecting them or ignoring them or missing them because of some weird way they were saved. And then we can now go and submit it. Now, we know it's not going to work because of that error, but just remember, we're in the status of payment in process, and we're trying to change the status. So we go to status change, payment submitted, and it should give me the error. Yes, of course it did. And it says the payee certification accept checkbox is required. I can go right here and click right on it. It'll bring me to that page. And I see that error again. And I say, oh yeah, I forgot to certify it down here. And once we hit save, it'll save the page and it'll put in my name and title and date. That is, you know, part of that electronic signature. So it won't allow somebody who's not a grantee payment signatory to do this. So while this is waiting, someone just asked to reaffirm, are we submitting the reimbursements monthly? Yes, Joanna described that If you do have claims, put in the claim each month. Of course, if you do it monthly, you're going to get paid more often. But that's how your contracts are written, that they are expected to be sent within the 30 days after the month ends. All right, so again, we're in the status of payment in process. This page saved. Good, let's now submit it. We'll go to status changes, payment submitted. It checks to see if I had checked that checkbox. I did. So now it brings me to the agreement page. Yes, this is just, true, and correct. And I submit it. And once it gets processed, it's now in the queue for the program manager to review it. How do I know that? Again, if I look at details, one, I didn't get an error, but two, if I look at details, it's now in a different status called payment in review. So I'll just mention one other thing. I'm not going to do it because it looks pretty much the same. But again, there's an option for your program manager to kick the claim back to you because you didn't provide enough supporting documentation. So when they send it back to you, you can come back into it. They should email you and tell you that you have this task, but you can come back into it and you can go into the payment uploads and upload the right documentation. So the program manager may have already unchecked something, and if not, it's okay. You can still click the button to add it. Now, of course, this has been submitted, so it's locked right now. I can't do it, but they would send it to you in the status of payment info requested. This page would be open for you to add more uploads. You can't delete once it's been submitted, but you can add more. So let's say this salary one is just, for the wrong month or unreadable or something. I could just go down here and I would have that browse button. I could add a new salary version for that month, save it, and then resubmit it under status changes. One thing you cannot do in that status of contract of payment info requested is you cannot edit this unitemized expenditure claim detail form. Your program manager, the reviewer, can. Maybe you put in for $10,000, but your documentation only shows that it's $9,458. They can adjust that. So you may need to work with them if you get it wrong and you don't want to have to start all over. But if they do kick it back to you, the only thing you can do is add more uploads.
No, I don't have anything right now. Again, if there's any questions that you have at any point about what is needed for backup documentation, like vendor invoices and receipts, canceled checks, payroll detail registers for each staff and employee, specific timesheets if you don't have a payroll processing service, or if you, are a smaller organization that doesn't have a payroll system. Any of that sort of required documentation for backup, always email your contract manager or have your programmatic contact email your contract manager if you're a physical person who doesn't connect with the contract manager. And we'll get answers to any of your questions. Just take a look at what's in your contract budget and from there, see what documentation you currently have. And of course, ask for any specificity around, what you have, will that work, will that not work, whatnot. So when in doubt, just always, get a question out to your contract manager. This session is being recorded. Jeff is recording it. He said at the beginning of the webinar that it'll be available on YouTube. As soon as it's generated and he's got an opportunity to upload it, he'll let us know, and your contract manager will send you an email with the link as to where you can get a copy of this webinar as well.
Yeah, it should be available by Monday.
Absolutely. So again, any contract or voucher-related questions, please direct those directly to your contract manager. Any questions around the Excluded Worker Fund or outreach or the website or any sort of programmatic questions, you definitely want to direct those to Joe McNerney and Milan and that team, of course.